Good evening, I'm Ryan Bonazzo. Thank you for joining us. Thunder Bay Police are reporting a major drug bust last night on the city's north side. Officers seized more than $750,000 in drugs and cash while executing a pair of search warrants. A home on Balsam Street and another on County Boulevard were raided by police in an ongoing investigation into drug trafficking by people from the Greater Toronto area. A search of the two residences led to the seizure of large quantities of cocaine, crack cocaine, heroin, crystal meth, hydromorphone capsules, and fentanyl, all with an estimated street value of $700,000. Police also confiscated about $50,000 in cash, along with a loaded handgun from one of the addresses. As a result, 7 people were arrested, 5 from Southern Ontario and 2 from here in Thunder Bay, on a variety of drug trafficking and firearm charges. The suspects appeared in bail court this morning and remain in custody. For the first time in nearly 8 months, the COVID-19 case count in the Thunder Bay district has hit triple digits with 100 active cases. There are now 13 infections today. 6 are in the Thunder Bay area, 6 others come from elsewhere in the district, and 1 is from a First Nation. 7 of the cases come as a result of close contact, while 6 other exposure sources are still unknown at this time. The 100 active cases are the most since April 9th. There are 2 new cases today in the Northwestern Health Unit, 1 each in the Dryden-Red Lake region and the Kenora area. There's no change to the active case total, with 16 across the NWHU catchment area. The district's medical officer of health is discouraging people from traveling to nearby U.S. states. Dr. Janet DeMille has issued a travel advisory recommending that people avoid Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, 3 states that are currently struggling to contain the spread of COVID-19. Corey Nordstrom spoke to her today about that and also got her reaction to the news that Ontario will soon expand booster shot eligibility.
Those looking to take advantage of the newly laxed border policies should think twice, says medical officer Dr. Janet DeMille. She is advising those in the Thunder Bay district to avoid non-essential travel to Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, which all rank in the top 5 of American states for highest numbers of COVID cases.
The CDC has indicated that has ranked them as high community transmission, literally in all the counties of those 3 states, and that does include the counties that are right next to the international border that's close to us.
DeMille is most worried about Minnesota, noting that it's the most frequent travel destination for locals venturing into the United States. But she says they've already seen proof that backs their worries about more cross-border travel.
We've also had some recent cases that acquired, in our area, the virus in those states and brought it back here, and then we saw a little bit of spread from them.
In other news, the province has announced an expansion of its booster dose eligibility. Starting December 13th, anyone over 50 will be able to book their 3rd dose of vaccine in Ontario for a date 6 months after their 2nd shot.
It does work in reducing the number of cases in those who have been boosted, as well as it preserves that protection against severe illness requiring hospitalization or ICU admission, which is certainly something that we want to do.
In January, Ontario will further expand eligibility for booster doses based on age and risk. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Well, with more on that expanded booster shot eligibility to Ontarians 50 and older, as well as other high-risk people, here's Colin DeMille.
Days after first being identified in Ontario, the Omicron variant is spreading. Durham region recorded its first case, a close contact of someone who traveled to southern Africa. And Ontario's chief medical officer of health says it's just a matter of time before the variant takes over.
When Delta overtook Alpha in Ontario, it took 4 months for that to occur. We may have a shorter window for Omicron.
With the inevitable now on the horizon, the government is turning to the vaccine for protection, allowing anyone aged 50 plus to book their booster as of December 13th, as long as 6 months have passed after their 2nd shot. Dr. Kieran says at this point, the province doesn't know how effective the vaccine will be against Omicron.
I do hope and wish that it gives us also protection against Omicron, but I have to be completely honest that we don't have the science to make that statement yet.
So for now, the boosters are intended to target the Delta variant, which is spreading rapidly in Ontario, threatening to spill over into the province's hospitals.
This is to be considered a 3-dose vaccine. We need this protection at the population level, but every single person as well, because we don't want you to end up on our ICUs.
But what about the rest of the population? There are calls to open up eligibility for boosters to everyone.
What would make logical sense from our perspective would be you just open it up to anybody that's 18 plus or perhaps even 12 and above, and it would be based on when they got their second shot. And you would do the rollout very similar to how it worked for first and second doses, with that time interval between second and third being 6 months.
Dr. Moore says it's a matter of capacity. Pharmacies, for example, are administering vaccines for COVID and influenza, and children 5 to 11 are now eligible for the COVID-19 shot. The province doesn't want to overwhelm the system.
If we don't see the capacity being used that we've built to best protect those staged and phased high priority groups, we will then potentially open it up sooner to other age groups.
In the meantime, Ontario is carefully monitoring Omicron.
We're doing the genome sequencing on all of the samples to understand exactly what we're dealing with, whether it's Omicron or Delta or any other variant. So we're following it very closely.
Looking to slow down a variant that could soon dominate the province.
Well, back here at home, details are now coming to light about a bitter dispute between local funeral homes and the Technical Standards and Safety Authority. Over the last year or so, the T.S.S.A. has been shutting down funeral home freight elevators and lifts across the province. It comes after a funeral director in Toronto died in 2017. But the Thunder Bay operators are now facing huge expenses and aren't happy with how it's being handled. Mitchell Ringos reports.
Under the T.S.S.A. recent directive, whenever they find an uncertified elevating device at a funeral home, they remove it from service. Spokesperson Alexandra Campbell says people didn't realize how unsafe these lifts for moving bodies and caskets can be until a Toronto funeral director fell down a shaft and died 4 years ago.
That investigation did bring it to our attention that unfortunately there are a number of funeral homes that had similar types of lifting devices, primarily to move caskets around, but workers are interacting with those, and there's patrons in funeral homes. There's little children often in funeral homes that are running around.
Everest Funeral Home President John-Bryan Gardiner says they have a lift at their Waverley Chapel that worked just fine since the 1950s. But earlier this year, a T.S.S.A. inspector showed up and instantly shut it down without even seeing how it worked. He was then told they had to install a T.S.S.A. approved elevator at a very high cost. So for the last 6 months, Everest staff have been moving caskets up and down the stairs by hand. Gardiner still wants to find a workable solution, but their options are limited.
We have operated safely for all these years, and we want to continue to do so. Just we cannot justify or afford the cost of what would effectively be a hospital-type elevator just to go from floor to floor with caskets and flowers. Understand, this isn't about moving people. It's about moving caskets, bodies, flowers, this kind of thing.
The Sargent and Son and the Blake funeral chapels were also told to shut down their lifts. And now the basement at Blake's is no longer usable because of the narrow stairs. GM Greg Sargent says luckily for their newer chapel, the T.S.S.A. gave them the option of raising the base of the elevator up 2 feet, making it acceptable. But he's upset they continue to have communication problems with T.S.S.A.
They never gave us an option. They just shut us down, and then they didn't offer any solutions for us either. We constantly emailed back to them asking things we could do that to get them back up and running, and the only thing they did to us is said, the guy laughed and said, here's a business card for an elevator company. You can talk to them, you need a new elevator, is basically what he said. But it's not an elevator, it's a lift.
The T.S.S.A. stands firm on their decision to close the lifts and will still lay fines if the businesses install new lifts that aren't approved and up to their standards. Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.
A local city councillor is asking for a report from administration on Monday night on options to turn the Nebing River into a more user-friendly recreational amenity. McKellar Ward Councillor Brian Hamilton calls the river a hidden treasure for kayakers and paddleboarders, with beavers and other wildlife that people rarely see. His motion to council would start the process of getting it cleaned up and promoted to outdoor enthusiasts. Hamilton's also asking for clarification from city staff on whether the LRCA or other agencies have jurisdiction to cut trees and collect garbage along the riverbanks.
Enhance the Nebing River as a recreational amenity in this neighborhood. So, I had the opportunity to go paddling down it in the fall time, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And the fact is more and more, especially with these talks about climate change, etc., people are really looking to, explore their backyards and explore things that are, right in their neighborhoods that they could walk to, that they don't have to get in their cars, that they could bicycle to, and that are easily accessible by everybody.
Hamilton also wants location options along the Nebing River for a dedicated launch area for non-motorized watercraft. If his motion is approved, he'll ask for funding to be included in the 2023 budget. The Regional Food Bank has launched its annual holiday food drive at several grocery stores across the city, including No Frills and the Real Canadian Superstore. Food donations can be dropped off at the bins located at the store exits. Some of the preferred items are canned meats and fish, baby formula, toilet paper, and diapers. All donated items will go directly to area food banks during the holiday season or will help restock the shelves in the new year. R.F.D.A. Community Services Manager Brendan Carlin is thrilled with all of the support.
In this way, but also every day we have our vehicles picking up food from all the grocery stores and bringing them back. So really important supporters, and they do a great job with this food drive and other things all year round to help us out. So,
there's tons of people that use the food bank all the time, and especially during the holiday season. There's a lot of financial stress to it and stuff. So, helping out all we can is the best thing we can do.
Last year, the food drive collected more than 2 tons of donated food. The R.F.D.A.'s food drive will run until December 24th. Hundreds of toys earmarked for children in Northern First Nations arrived in Thunder Bay today, and they made quite the entrance. A Canadian Air Force C-17 Globemaster touched down as part of the annual Toys for the North campaign. The jet, which regularly carries troops, was filled with pallets of gifts for kids in North Caribou Lake and Kiwewin. It's the 7th year that the RCMP and Gardiner Transportation have partnered with North Star Air to make it happen. CEO Jeff Stout says he looks forward to it.
For North is an amazing opportunity to give back to the communities that support us throughout the year. It hasn't been any more true than the last couple of years when COVID has really had a huge impact on our operation and our position in these communities as an essential service provider.
The toys will be sorted here in Thunder Bay next week. They will then be flown by North Star Air staff and Santa Claus, of course, up to the remote First Nations the following week. Well, what a great initiative.